Hello, I am Matthias Buck. I'm heading the EU energy policy work at Agora Energiewende, and I will introduce to you now in a few minutes a proposal that we made last year in September for what we call an EU renewable energy cost reduction facility. Now, the background to this proposal is that the cost of capital is a major determinant of the cost for a renewable energy investment, and this has a number of consequences. We know renewable energy investments are capital intensive. That means the cost of the capital to make the investment has a major repercussion on the competitiveness of the investment vis-à-vis other investments into other generating technologies, be it coal, nuclear, gas. Now, against this background, it is very interesting to see that if you're looking at the conditions in Europe for renewables investments, you find that the cost of capital varies widely throughout the EU. In some member states, in Germany, France, the Benelux, and the UK, the cost of capital is very low, whereas particularly in the south of Europe, southeastern part of Europe, Eastern European member states, and Spain, Portugal, the cost of capital is rather high. Now, the consequences of this difference is that, to give you an example, if you are building a wind turbine in Croatia, you would have to pay about twice as much for building the same wind turbine as you would have to pay in Germany, simply because of the differences in the cost of capital. Now, this does translate, of course, in higher costs for the consumers and the taxpayers that have to finance the 15 or 20-year commitment for the market premium that is given to the project developer. Now, looking at the situation from a European perspective, we are moving after 2020 to an EU collectively binding target. There is a question, will this need to be addressed, yes or no? In our view, yes, it should be addressed, because the higher cost of capital in some of the low GDP per capita member states mean the consumers and taxpayers in these member states would pay more to contribute to reaching the EU target, and they would profit less from the opportunities of investing into renewables. Now, according to our analysis, this situation is not not need to stay as such, but there is a transitional challenge that we want to target with our proposal. Now, the cost reduction facility idea that we have proposed is quite simple from an investor perspective, and I will quickly lead you through the key idea. If you're perceiving a trilateral relationship, here you have the project developer and the investor perspective. The usual situation is there is a regulatory framework by a member state. There are specific commitments made by the member states how project developers will be supported through feed-in tariffs, market premiums, etc., to have some revenue stability when developing a project. Now, from the investor perspective, there are, as I was saying, different risk perceptions that play out in the differences in the cost of capital, the map I was showing before. If you want to reduce the cost of capital, you need to work on the risk perception of the investor, and this is what our proposal is doing. In essence, we are proposing that an EU institution, it need not be the Commission, it could be the EIB, the European Investment Bank, it could be a special facility set up for that purpose. This institution would hand out a guarantee for the tariff commitment given by this member state. And by doing this, you would automatically reduce the ex-ante risk perception all throughout Europe to the best-in-class levels that we currently find in Germany or France. That's the basic idea. Of course, there's a lot of detail how you get to this idea to develop it further in practice. So some of the basic features, let me quickly lead you through. So the member state would provide a tariff to an investor. In our proposal, if the member state sticks to the commitment, and this is followed through for the 15 or 20 years the commitment exists, the cost reduction facility would never be required. So the guarantee would not be used. If there is an issue, there is a simple guarantee, an on-demand guarantee, which would give the comfort to investors that there would be very quick payment from the guarantee facility if there is some problem in the payment of the tariff from the member state system. Now, the complexity in this trilateral relationship is here, rather, that there needs to be an agreement found between the member states and the EU institution on the terms under which specific projects qualify for accessing this guarantee facility. And this we're developing in our proposal at quite some length, and this is something we are also discussing at the moment in a multi-stakeholder dialogue process with investors, institutions from the EU side and member states. In a nutshell, what would happen if you have such a guarantee facility, the risk of the non-payment would move from the relationship between the project developer and the member state to the relationship between the EU facility and the member state. And by doing this, you would give the comfort to the investor and the project developer that they actually will have an ex-ante risk perception that is the best in class you find throughout the EU. Now, going a bit more in detail on the type of risks that we consider should be addressed through this guarantee facility. There are some renewable energy specific risks that you can consider, and there are some country specific risks. So this basic distinction is important. There are a number of renewable energy specific risks which, strictly speaking, should be left with the developer and the investor. The resource risk, the capex risk, the technology risk, the operating costs. There are some country-specific risks which are not related specifically to renewable energies, and these should also not be part of such a guarantee facility. For instance, the general legislation, general rules on taxation, property rights regimes, etc. What we propose the guarantee facility should address is, as I was saying before, the tariff risk. So in particular, the risk of retroactive changes that features very prominently in the risk perception of investors, the risk of non-payment of the tariff, and also some sector-specific taxation risks that have occurred in the past. Now, as part of the discussion between the facility and the member state on the terms under which projects would qualify for this guarantee facility, we also believe that non-tariff risks should be addressed. So the risks that stem from the regulatory and administrative context of that particular member state, access to the grid, the permitting regime, etc. So discussing between the member state and the facility on the terms of accessing the facility is an opportunity to also address those non-tariff risks and to agree on certain improvements on the national framework that will be made to take out further risk and reduce cost. If such a guarantee facility were to be put in place as we have proposed, based on a conservative calculation, it could save taxpayers and consumers in the member states approximately 34 billion euros to deliver the EU renewable energy target for 2030. Effectively, we would reduce the cost by taking the past perception of investors. So if everything has gone okay, the risk perception of the investor is that things could have been much cheaper, and we would bring this to the ex-ante perception of the investor today. And this delta is what the consumers and the taxpayers would save, because they would have to pay, or they would not have to pay this particular add-on to the market premium commitment given to the investor and the project developer. So effectively, we would be saving money for the consumers and taxpayers, and rather giving it to the consumers, leaving it to the consumers and taxpayers than giving it to the investors. Importantly, in our view, the participation in this facility would be entirely voluntary. So looking from a member state perspective, this is very important in our point of view. This would not be an all or nothing facility, but it would be something which member states that want to make use of it could test, and if they see it is working for their case, they could scale it up, and by its functioning, it would ensure that the market is picking up confidence again, and the cost of capital would come down. So in our understanding of this concept, it would be a transitional facility that is helping to have the best-in-class costs for the investment into renewables in Europe already today. So we would save a lot of money, but it would clearly be a transitional facility, which you are testing, you're scaling up, and then it would phase out the moment the market in the different member states is picking up confidence again. Important as well, this is what we're currently discussing with financiers and some of the institutions. There is potential to also apply this idea to existing regimes and existing assets. We are currently looking into the details of how this could happen. There is also, of course, potential to apply this idea to not only renewable energy investments, but also to other capital-intensive investments for the energy transition, for example, to energy efficiency. This was a brief introduction to the proposal we made last year. You're very welcome to read our much more elaborate report on it, to download the slides, which are more comprehensive on the presentation, and to get in touch with us if you have any question on this proposal that you want to discuss. Many thanks for your time.